So I'm Miranda from The Upcoming. It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How are you finding London so far?
It's great. It's been a year since I've last been here, and
Yeah.
I relish every time I get to come take a trip here.
So this is such a special film, A Ghost Story. Really enjoyed it. You can see from the poster you've gone with this really bold iconography of the ghost. Where did that decision come from? It's so striking.
It's an idea that I've had for a long time. The idea of making a film with someone wearing a sheet
Yeah.
predates this specific movie. I had this idea a while ago of making a traditional horror film, like a traditional haunted house movie, like The Conjuring or Poltergeist or something like that, but where the ghost looks like this, like he's a guy wearing a sheet. And I just thought that was a funny idea, and filed that away with all the other ideas that I file away, and figured I'd do something with it someday. And last year I was finishing up my last film and had a bunch of different ideas just kind of like pulsing through my head, as they often do, and they started to coagulate around this one idea of time and the passage of time and relationships and how they are affected by time. And somehow this ghost character wound up adding himself to those ideas, and I realized that there was a film there, and I just wrote it very quickly, didn't really put too much thought into it, and then decided to make it, and then we made it. So it was a very seat of the pants execution of an idea that came together very fast and very organically. And it was so fast, in fact, that I'm still kind of like trying to figure out exactly what the movie is, what it means to me, but I know it means a lot to me. So
Yeah. I think another thing that I really liked about The Ghost was the kind of childlike image of the sheet and the eyes, and as you say, the theme of time. There's something very nostalgic about this film. I think, even though it kind of deals with this all-at-onceness of events unfolding, but obviously one of the huge things for nostalgia is the aesthetic. The smaller aspect ratio and the vignette. How early on did you settle on that was the frame you were going to shoot in?
I knew that it would be 1331 right away. In fact, the first line of the script is, "This movie will be in 1331." And so that was there at the very beginning. I'd always wanted to shoot a movie in that aspect ratio. I didn't know when I'd have the chance again, and I felt that the story of a character who's constrained in a space would be a good vehicle to use that aspect ratio as a creative choice. And the vignette on it, the edges, were something that came about in post-production. I really like the idea of this movie being an object, almost like something you could hold, and putting those edges on it unified the entire movie in a way. It kind of put it all in a box. It gave it a proscenium that was very noticeable, and in a subtle way, but nonetheless still very noticeable. And then it also had that nostalgic quality to it that felt like the slideshows that my parents used to show me of of vacations and things like that. And I'm admittedly a sentimentalist. I get incredibly sentimental. I get incredibly caught up in nostalgia, and this movie deals with that to a large degree. And so giving it that sort of nostalgic sheen was important to me.
I suppose another very sentimental aspect of the film is the location, and
Yes.
the location's so central. How did you work with that, the way that it manifests itself in the...
To lean back just a little.
Sorry.
Right.
In the story and also in the soundtrack, I noticed a lot you kind of let the landscape speak. It's got a very defined kind of character.
Yeah, one of the other ideas that came about, or that led to this film, was my wife and I were moving to LA to finish my last film, and I really was torn up about leaving our house in Texas behind. I just did not want to leave. And it really, I was like, why am I so upset about it? Why am I so attached to this house that we don't even own? We're just renting it. And I realized that that's a running theme in my life, is I get really attached to spaces. I get really attached to physical spaces. And I sentimentalize the homes I've lived in. I get attached to them to a almost, dangerous degree. And so that was an idea that led to this movie. I wanted to make a film about that. All of my films, to some degree, are about home, finding homes and leaving homes, and so that was nothing new. But I knew that this was an opportunity to really delve into that and to make the house a character, that sounds like a cliche, but in this case it was true. And we wound up finding that house that we shot it in the neighborhood, or in the suburb that I grew up in, which wasn't part of the plan, but just added to the whole nostalgic factor of it. And it really, it was initially going to be even more centric in the movie. Like I thought that perhaps the title would be a haunted house and the house would be the central focus of the film. Gradually, it receded into the background, but nonetheless, it still was a very important aspect of it, and it really is special to me. I mean, the house looks like the house that I had moved out of that meant so much to me, and it really was a way for me to deal with my own attachment to physical spaces, which I am indeed, like I still am. Like that's something that I always will be. Like the idea of four walls becoming something that becomes so intrinsic to who you are as a person. Like that's something that I think I'll always be dealing with in my movies.
Yeah, and it was a real home, wasn't it? You used someone's real home, and
they let us. They were planning on building a new house on that lot, and so we knew that it was not long for this world, but they kindly lent it to us for production and then let us get rid of it.
Yeah, which is brilliant. Really ties together with all of the things that the film deals with as well. Another thing I wanted to ask about the score is just gorgeous. I mean, I think what's very obvious from it is that it comes from a close working relationship in which Oldham is able to just really experiment. How much input did you have working with him? Is it incredibly collaborative, or are you happy to kind of say, do your thing, we'll experiment?
Oh, well, you mean Will Oldham?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't actually do any music for this one.
Oh, really?
It was Daniel Hart, who's done all of my previous films.
Yeah.
And Will just acted this time. But Daniel's done all of my films, like from my short films onward. He's the only composer I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed, the only composer I ever do work with, because he gets my movies in a very specific way, and I don't really have to talk with him that much about it. That's one of the things that I, value in a collaborator, is when they intuitively understand what it is you want and are able to deliver without actually ever discussing it with you. And he can just watch a movie, and he'll watch the rough cut, he'll watch some footage, and come back with a piece of score that fits perfectly. And this one he wrote very quickly. We just finished Pete's Dragon, and then we went off and shot this one, and he watched the edit of it and then started delivering music, and it was one of those cases where we had to do very little work to make that music fit into the film. Like he was delivering cues that just fit perfectly with every individual scene. And then of course he wrote this song that Casey's character in the movie has written, and that predates the movie. He had written that song and played it for me while we were doing the Pete's Dragon score, and I became obsessed with it. And as I was writing this movie, I was listening to it a lot, and it just wound its way into the script and became a part of it. And thankfully, he was totally fine with letting us, use it. And it became really the heart of the movie, is that scene where Rooney listens to it, and that was it wasn't initially part of the movie, or part of the script, but once I heard it, I knew that had to be in the film.
Great, that's fantastic.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Likewise.